Hello, welcome to Dreamforce 2019. I'm Jason Weil, the Senior Vice President of Innovation at Salesforce, and welcome to San Francisco. I'm so happy to be joined live by Mina Guli, who is the founder and CEO of Thirst. Thirst was given the 2019 YPO Innovation Award for Social Impact. The criteria for selection is it's given to true leaders who have demonstrated an impact at a local and a global level through innovative solutions. So congratulations, Mina, and welcome to Dreamforce. Tell
Thanks,
us a little
Jason.
bit about who is Thirst.
Thanks, Jason. It's an enormous honor to be here, not only in such a fabulous and incredibly innovative part of the world, but also an incredibly innovative and really impressive part of San Francisco, which is right here in the Salesforce Tower. When I found out that I won the Innovation Award, I was blown away. I never expected to be given an opportunity like this to be able to have a conversation with someone like you about what I'm doing. I started Thirst as a nonprofit. It's designed to raise awareness about the water crisis. This time last year, I was running through Uzbekistan, and at the time I started in a small port called Moynak, and I wanted to go there because I had read about how the Aral Sea, which used to be one of the biggest inland oceans in the world and is now less than 10% of its size, had just been shrinking. People had told me it was because of climate change, but I wanted to go and see for myself. And as I ran through what used to be an enormous pool of water, I ran past the carcasses of boats, old shipping boats that the fishermen in the port used to take out. And I met local women who begged me to solve the water problems that they were facing, begged me to help them to find alternative sources of income. And as I ran towards the sea, for 5 days, I ran with dust blowing into my lungs. And eventually the dust was replaced by mud on my shoes, and I reached the edge of the ocean more than 100 miles later. At the time, winning an award or sitting here in San Francisco was so far from my mind. What was foremost of my mind is the purpose for which Thirst was set up, which is to solve our global water crisis. Most people have no idea the nature or extent of the crisis. I think it's easy when we are in a big city like San Francisco, when we turn on the tap and water pours out. When it's so fresh, we can literally pick up a glass and just drink it. We forget that water actually is key to not only our drinking in our life, but our societies, our economies, our communities. And a big purpose of what we're doing with Thirst is bringing water to the forefront, putting it onto the front page of the media, explaining to everyone that water goes into absolutely everything we use, we buy and we consume every day, from the smart outfit that you're wearing to the food that you eat, the coffee you probably drank at some stage, maybe several today. All of those things take a huge amount of water. And when we have no water, we have none of these things. So just to put life in perspective, just what you're wearing today took more water to make than all the water you have drunk in your entire lifetime.
Wow.
Like just one outfit. So thinking that water is someone else's problem, thinking that water is not something any of us need to care about is a real fallacy. Water isn't someone else's problem, it's ours. And unless we solve it, our world is going to be a very different place to the place it is now.
I'm sure you asked a lot. Did you run here?
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me, oh, are you in the middle of one of your runs? Or I go to meetings and they say, oh, did you run here? But actually today I really did run here. We were snarled in a nasty traffic jam, and I thought to myself, okay, I've got my sneakers in my bag. I should just get out and run. So I did.
So inspiring. Thank you for sharing that, Mina. And I've had the pleasure of doing business and doing work in almost 40 countries. I've never been to Uzbekistan. Can you talk a little bit more about your background in banking and legal? There's so many things that you could have done, and you're very talented, many paths that you chose. Why this one? And
why choosing the thing I'm least talented at, which is running? Uzbekistan was a bit of an eye-opening experience, one of actually many around the world. Scientists, after 30 years of scientists telling everybody that the ocean was going to disappear, the ocean did disappear. And it disappeared because of unfettered access for agricultural purposes, for growing rice and growing cotton. why did I choose this life over something else, sitting in an office building, staying nice and warm, not having to deal with blisters on my feet, having a steady income? Because without water, we have nothing. Without water, we have none of this. First of all, let me dispel a myth. When I explain to people that I'm using extreme athletic events in order to try to bring attention to the biggest crisis facing our generation, the crisis that the World Economic Forum, the only risk that the World Economic Forum has rated in the top 5 for the last 8 consecutive years. When I explain to people that I'm going to try and fix this, and not just try, I will solve this problem, they're shocked. And they're even more shocked because I'm using running, and I'm not a runner. I'm not a naturally talented runner. Actually, I don't like running. I came to running very, very late in life. I had a bad accident. The doctors told me I'd never be able to run. And you don't know me that well, but when I'm thrown a challenge, a red rag is waved in front of me, then I think, well, who is someone else to define the limits of what I can and can't do? Who is anybody to say that just because this has always been done this way, it's the way we should do it in the future? So I set out to learn to run, and I'm really bad at it, but it's become a tool for me to be able to go to some of the most extreme places on the planet and allow people to tell their stories. And it's a way for us to generate media attention and exposure and give people a platform. So why water? Water, because it's absolutely critical. At those times when all I want to do is stop running, people ask me, why do you keep going? And I keep going because I think about the hopes and dreams of the next generation. And I think that if it's true that we're going to run out of water, and experts predict that by 2030, 11 years from now, there'll be a 40% greater demand for water than the supply of water available, then what happens to those hopes and dreams? If we live in cities like Beaufort West that I went to see and ran through in South Africa, where the taps have been turned off and the kids stay home from school waiting for the water trucks to come, because if you're not there when the water truck comes, you lose your water. And I saw teenagers running after the truck begging for water. And when we turned right instead of left and a fight broke out on the street, that is not how I want the next generation to live. So why water? Water because it's everything. It's the foundation of our societies, our economies, and the future of the next generation.
Well, that's a phenomenal answer. And, you made me think of, all of these space exploration missions that are going on, NASA, SpaceX, Boeing, Dreamliner. And to your point, what is the microcosm of what they're looking for is an indication of intelligent life, the presence of water in these other planets. But to your point, and I think you said it very well, sometimes it might be human nature that we take these things for granted. So once again, thank you and congratulations for being here and flying all the way from Tel Aviv and then literally running here. So a couple of things that I wanted to drill into a little bit that you brought up. This notion of frugal innovation. Books have been written about it. And the way I would describe it is kind of using constraints as a natural advantage to generate ideas for solutions to problems that haven't been solved. Or in other words, the danger of taking solutions that work in the developed world and just exporting them to other parts of the world with small changes and expecting them to work very well. So can you talk a little bit about, as you went through these journeys and the primary interactions and research that you had, the learnings that you had, how did that help shape the success and the path and journey that you took on? Did frugal innovation really play a role? And those direct experiences, what really helped you land on something that you knew was not only getting traction, but clearly taking off in terms of a success?
Yeah, I think that we often think that we have to orchestrate innovation, and sometimes innovation is there in front of us. And we are merely the architect of a plan that's already there. I think in some cases when innovation doesn't work, it's because we don't listen. So one of the big things that my big observations in doing what I've done is that when we allow others to have a platform, to have a conversation about a problem that they have seen or a problem that they have innovated and solved around, the solutions become immediately obvious. There's a guy who lives on the cliff tops of the Atacama Desert. His name is Hugo, and he has the best job title in the world, which is fog catcher. And Hugo read about these crazy people who live in extreme environments, and they erect these nets and they capture the water that's coming off the ocean or coming off any kind of environment, and they capture it in these nets. So he's erected these old fishing nets above the cliff tops of the Atacama, and he's capturing these small molecules of water in the nets, using it to grow fish and vegetables in an environment where some of his neighbours have never seen it rain. It's a remarkable story about a kind of innovation that now is not only on the cliff tops of the Atacama Desert, but there are a bunch of different companies now who've created mechanisms, technology, to actually draw water out of the atmosphere. Frugal innovation is available everywhere when we're smart and when we're careful and we're clever about how to deploy it.
That's great. So I'd like to get your perspective on trust. Obviously, trust is very important to the YPO community. I read the impact study recently that showed how trust is just moving to be the top priority for all leaders. And it's not really surprising. Salesforce, I think, realized it the same thing a few years ago. Values are very important to Salesforce. Our number one value is trust. So you could argue after water, maybe trust is the next most important thing, because we kind of believe that if you lose that trust, nothing else matters. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of trust in the journey that you've been on with Thirst?
Yeah, I think if we don't trust facts, if we don't trust one another, then it's really hard to make an impact or create change. Towards the end of my campaign, the last campaign, I tried to run 100 marathons in 100 days to demonstrate what it means to be 100% committed to something. At day, all the way along, I'd had the opportunity to tell incredible stories about amazing people that I'd met, but at the same time I'd been dealing with this personal challenge, which was that I knew that my body was breaking down and was breaking down faster than I had expected or hoped or wanted. I mean, of course, running a marathon every single day for 100 days, of course your body is going to break down. But mine was deteriorating really rapidly, and I was absolutely terrified about the consequences of this. On day 63, when we'd realised that I literally couldn't walk at the end of marathon 62, I had to be helped into the car because I couldn't even get in by myself. On day 63, we went to the hospital instead of going running. And they did a scan. They found that I had a 15-centimetre fracture in my leg, the top of my leg and my femur, and they told me that I wouldn't be able to run anymore. Well, my whole world at the time collapsed around me. All I could see was darkness, and all I could think of was, I might have done 62, but there's 38 stories and 38 groups of people out there that have stories that I haven't told. I've let them down. I've let down the thing I'm most passionate about, which is water, and I've let down the next generation who I promised I would solve this crisis for. And at that day, I was sitting in my wheelchair and my team came in and they said, Mina, this issue of water is so much bigger than you or than any one of us. Today, let us take your distance for you. And day 63, while I sat in my wheelchair, they went and ran my marathon. And day 64, people we didn't even know from across Cape Town came and ran. And day 65, people from around the world started to run, and more people. And by day 100, we hadn't run 100 marathons in 100 days. We'd run more than from the North to the South Pole. Thousands of people in 160 cities in more than 50 countries and territories across the planet.
Wow.
When I sat in that wheelchair, the first thing my mentor and my team told me was, you have to trust us. And you have to trust the global community and you have to trust the power of others to create the change that you want to see in this world. Someone at the end of my run told me, individually we can make an impact, but together we change the world.
It's an amazing story, and I guess on behalf of everyone, and you as the recipient of this award, I think it's clear to say you haven't let anybody down. I think it's absolutely amazing, the movement that you started. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to listen to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, have a conversation with Mark Benioff, the chairman and co-CEO of Salesforce. And one of the comments that Tim made that you made me think of was, hey, leaders out there, stop thinking about your purpose and finding your purpose. The purpose is clear, which is help the world become a better place, and start acting on that. And I thought that was really powerful. Almost sounds obvious, but I think a lot of us spend so much time searching that if we were to focus the energy on just go do something, I think we could have a big impact. The other thing, though, there was an article in Harvard Business Review that came out in the last couple of weeks, and the recommendation at a high level was, don't pursue your passion, find your purpose. And for me, I was a bit conflicted by that. I would love your perspective, because I think you're someone that's found that it's not either or, that you can find your purpose and your passion at the same time. And what advice would you give to people out there? Time is precious. We don't always have the chance maybe to look around and maybe have that purpose or passion hit us upside the head. But how, from your experience, how can we be better at finding where those purpose and passion areas are?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the concept it's purpose or passion, because at the end of the day, don't you have to just do what you believe? So I've done 3 big expeditions. I ran across 7 deserts on 7 continents in 7 weeks. Then I ran 40 marathons in 40 days down 6 of the world's great rivers on 6 continents. Telling you this makes me sound like I'm a complete lunatic. But anyway, I did these things. And then I ran my 100 marathons. So in the first one, I always thought that it was something I was just going to do, and then I was going to go back and get a real job, whatever a real job is these days. But anyway, a real job. So I stood on the bank of this river. When I got there, I saw the support vehicle stuck on a mud bank in the middle of the river, right? It was on a barge. We'd been trying to float it across so we could run on the other side. And I said to the local rangers, hey, is this normal? Why is the river so low? And they said, Mina, we have never, ever seen the river so low in all our lives. It's the first time it won't actually reach the ocean. It's killing our tourism business. It's killing everything. We live off this river. I said to them, well, is it drought? What's the deal? So no, what's happened is that all these grape plantations over the other side of the river have been growing and expanding, and they're just draining the river for the production of grapes. And I stood there on the bank of that river. It was searing hot. And I thought to myself, how often have I taken grapes out of a bag, looked at the ones down the bottom and gone, nah, they can go in the bin. I thought, we're looking at this whole issue completely wrong. And as I stood there on the bank of that river, I felt my life change. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. There is no going back and getting a real job or another job. This is my entire purpose, my passion, my everything in life. Because without water, without ensuring a water secure future for our kids, our communities, our families, our economies, there is no anything else. And I think that for all of us, our passion and our purpose is inside us. We need to find it. We don't want to listen to it because it's inconvenient. We don't want to know what it is because it disrupts the path that we're on. We don't always like it because oftentimes it means that we have to do something different from the expectation everyone else has of us. But when we know what it is and we can identify it, then we can really live it. And when you live it, you live your full purpose. When you live your full purpose, incredible, amazing things can happen and you can achieve the impossible. I think often, and I also felt this, that you think, but I'm nobody. I grew up, I was a kid in Australia, I'm not a runner, I'm not connected to people, I'm not anything special. My dad was an immigrant. And we think, who are we? You don't have to be anyone to be someone. Every single one of us is capable of greatness. But to be great, you really need to find that purpose and that passion and live it.
That's phenomenal advice, and couldn't agree with you more. And then let's continue with that and talk a little bit about your own transformation, which you touched on. You know, as leaders, we're challenging our teams to change. We're challenging our partners and ecosystem to change, even our customers to change their behavior. But I think sometimes we as leaders forget about, you know, the needs that we have to change and evolve as leaders. You touched on some of these, but were there one or two things that you think that your old self had to evolve from to be successful in this mission that you had taken on?
The world is changing really rapidly. Right now, my country is on fire. Fires are literally burning across 4 states. People's lives are at risk. Homes are burning to the ground. We are facing the worst drought we've ever faced. We're in here, even just in California, most people know and understand that water is a scarce resource, that the climate is changing. We need to look at things differently. We need to do things differently. We can't do things the same way that our parents and our grandparents did them before. Doing things that aren't normal are terrifying. The issues are similar and the solutions are also very similar. We need to ask for help. We need to listen to the advice of others, but we need to do it we need to wend our way through in a way that's also true to ourselves.
Yes, and I mean, and you mentioned, you know, the importance of learning and self-growth. I've always believed that life begins outside of the comfort zone, but it's not always human nature. You say it's not the most convenient thing for where we are in our own lives. You got me inspired and excited about this movement, and I feel honestly that a part of my past has been inadequate or misfocused, and I mean that because without water, what else is there? What can you tell me and everyone who's listening who wants to get more involved and help you advance and accelerate this movement? How can we help?
Come for a run.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. You say okay now, but just wait.
You didn't say how long.
Sign you up for a couple of marathons here and there. No, all jokes aside, there are simple things that we can do every day in our daily lives that can make an impact. Of course, you can turn off the tap when you brush your teeth, but there are also other things that we don't imagine. Reducing food waste. Next time you think about, oh, I don't really want those grapes, that extra bit of carrot, think about actually reusing it or composting it, but not throwing it in the bin. And that goes also for clothing and textiles and everything else. And a lot of the data also shows that if you can go vegetarian a meal or a day a week, that also makes a huge impact. The question you're asking me is much deeper though, which is what can we do to actually create a global community for change? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is actually quite simple. We need to build a coalition of the willing, those that are willing and able to stand up and say, we need to use water, manage water, and think about water completely differently from the way we've ever done it before. So right now I'm building a coalition of companies, individuals, organizations, and other nonprofits to say, we are going to stand up. We are going to close this gap between the demand for water and the supply of water available by identifying ways that we can increase supply and identify ways in which we can decrease demand. And we are going to solve this crisis. And we're going to do it in time for our next generation to live a full and complete life in a water-secure future.
Well, that's very clear. And obviously you can count on Salesforce and YPO to continue to be a part of that. And once again, congratulations on an extremely well-deserved award, the 2019 YPO Innovation Award for Social Impact. Amazing, Mina. Absolutely amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jason.